Hi, my name is Peter Harlock. I'm Chief Executive of Comres. We're a market and opinion research company. And my task now is to do an introduction of the political landscape from that polling and market research perspective. And I'm not unfamiliar with the challenge that you guys have in the charity sector. I was Chief Operating Officer for Save the Children for 4 years, several years ago. So I feel I understand what you're dealing with. And I'm going to take about 10 minutes just to briefly run through and put some bones down, and other people are going to fill in some of the flesh, put flesh on those bones. As you'll see from the slides, I'm going to go through 4 main areas. My view is that the landscape we're entering is not a wasteland, it's not a desert, it's just a different landscape. And the 4 areas I'm going to run through are the actual new political landscape and the players, the new policy priorities, whether it will last or not, and the so what for not-for-profit companies. So, the changed political landscape, it's not a desert, and the changes are clearly the government itself, Parliament, and what I call the quangocracy. And for the government itself, we clearly got a coalition. As yet, we don't see any major fault lines. It's holding together. We got a new minister for not-for-profit, Nick Hurd, who was the shadow minister. And we know from what he said before the election that he sees a bigger percentage of the pie, the public sector pie, going to not-for-profit, even if the pie itself reduces. So that's an important angle. Parliament, the second area, where we see 50% of MPs are new. That's obviously a huge impact. And with the coalition, that also means that backbenchers are going to be much more important. And possibly as well, the Lords will be more important as a house. So quite a lot of new angles there to think about. And then thirdly, the quangocracy area. I think probably your guess is as good as mine. Likely to be large cuts in quangos, as we all know. But precisely what those will be and what the impacts will be, I don't think any of us know yet. The new policy priorities, absolutely fascinating area. Still very much a honeymoon period with the electorate. Clearly 59% of the electorate as a whole voted for these 2 combined parties, not for the coalition itself, but for the 2 parties. Now, from our Comres polls, we saw post-election polls that 60% of the electorate thought that the coalition would be effective at reducing the deficit, compared to 29% who wouldn't. 54% compared to 36% against thought the coalition would be better at cleaning up politics, and 44% versus 21% thought the coalition would be good for Britain. So the implications of that are the electorate do not want another election soon, and that they will punish the party that breaks that coalition, obviously. So that will mean, in our view, that it's all about holding the coalition together. The parties in the coalition will want to hold it together. In the medium term, it's not clear at all. Clearly it's about still managing those long-term cuts and rolling back the state, but more than that at the moment, we don't really know. So will it last? 2 levels of thinking. First, the coalition party leaders themselves. Chemistry, we've seen right from the beginning, actually very strong. It's still very strong. And that's very important. They clearly wanted at a personal level to succeed. And gut feel for myself and Comres, but also wider, talking to people in terms of companies, charities, and indeed politicians, is that it will hang together at least until next May, when the AV vote comes through, and then we'll see, but it's there for the longer term. And again, as I said, no one will want to see themselves as being seen as a wrecker, no party and none of the leaders. However, the second level of thinking is about the party activists themselves. Clearly, we're talking here about the Conservatives and the Lib Dems. And what's clear is that there is, and has been actually, a building backbench challenge. And that challenge was particularly strong from the outset at a local level, which is not surprising because the Conservatives and Lib Dems were fighting the election very strongly at a local level against what each stood for. So continue to be real challenges there. We've seen recently in the past few days the challenges that they're going to be around building schools for the future and making cuts that are seen at a very local level again, and MPs having to defend themselves at a local level, whether that's Tory, Lib Dem. So the conferences are likely to be a challenging time, and particularly the Lib Dem conference, so we'll watch this space. So what's the situation for not-for-profits? Well, less money going forward, clearly, in terms of the public sector, which probably means less experimentation at a broad level. So perhaps less money being given out for experimentation easily. That's not to say the opportunities aren't there. The whole issue about rolling back the state and reduced bureaucracy for charity tendering has got to be a huge opportunity, balancing the fact that in theory the public sector is being chopped down. So big opportunities around reduced bureaucracy, and as Nick Hurd has clearly said, trying to open up the way for not-for-profit sector getting more involved in the charity sector. Thirdly, we've spoken about the uncertain lifespan of the coalition, but at least likely to be here until May, at least likely to be here to harden up some pretty concrete policies. So important to get going on that, but not forgetting Labour clearly, because they're going to be, once they've got through their leadership battle, very much gearing up for the future. And fourthly, in terms of the landscape, very dynamic policy environment indeed, with really big opportunities therefore for influencing. And I think that means that it's really important for the not-for-profit sector to be out there influencing, not just with Minister, but also with those backbenchers and indeed potentially with the Lords. So big opportunities, changing landscape, not a desert, be out there influencing. And I think the final thing I would say is influence, but be very targeted. We found in the first month or so in our surveys, which we do regularly with MPs, that the new MPs haven't 4 to 6 weeks and they still didn't have offices. So they're really trying to get to grips with a huge amount of things and people talking to them. So be very focused, I would say, in how you're trying to engage and in what you're trying to engage about. So really think about it and find out what their priorities are. So I think that's the perspective from my point of view. Not a desert, very changeable, everything to influence, big opportunities, but be very targeted. And I suppose my question for you out there is, you've been living it for the past couple of months, you're a lot closer. What do you think, and what are the impressions that you're getting back from MPs, from Nick Hurd, and indeed your own thoughts about how to target going forward, and whether that's individually or that's together? Thanks very much.